Great. All right, sweet.
Awesome.
Hold on. All right. All right. If everyone can mute themselves for now, and then when I start. So welcome everyone who attended. I'm really excited to launch the SAGA Live, our 5th one, inshallah. We were joined with really thankful that really good voices were able to join tonight. We have 3 third years, myself as a second year and 1 first year. So just going around, we'll probably get everyone to introduce themselves. So we also have a really special guest with us as well, in which I'll quickly introduce as Dr. Rakeem Elmi, and we'll go more into her later on as well. So at the moment, just starting off, so my name is Safia. I graduated in 2018 and I'm currently doing Bachelor of Midwifery, and I'm currently in my 2nd year. So we'll probably go with first Uzair, if he wants to quickly introduce himself as well.
Yep. My name is Uzair Hussain. I go to West Sydney University and I'm in first year Bachelor of Nursing.
All right. Beautiful. And who else wants to go next? Layla, do you want to go next as well?
Yeah, sure. My name is Layla. I graduated MIDI in 2017 and I'm in my 3rd year of Bachelors of Nursing at UTS at the moment, and I'm graduating at the end of this year.
Exciting. And our next 3rd year, Rehan, do you want to go next?
My name is Rehan. I also graduated in 2017. I'm also studying Bachelor of Nursing at UTS in my 3rd year, so finish in a few weeks.
A few more weeks, that's so exciting. Like every time I hear 3rd year, I'm like, almost there. And our final student, Daniel, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, my name's Daniel. I'm also in UTS doing my final year as a Bachelor of Nursing, hopefully, so not too long to go.
All right, perfect. So we also have a very special guest with us, so we have a senior lecturer and deputy director of clinical education of midwifery in the School of Nursing and Midwifery, and she finished her PhD in 2012, focusing on a woman's experiences of severe postpartum hemorrhage and emergency hysterectomy. And we'll go in more detail of her quick biography later on as well. So she's currently at Western Sydney University, and she really kindly shared her time with us as well. If she wants to give a quick few words as well at the introduction.
It's great program, the initiatives, affair. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to listening to all the presenters today and hopefully shed some light on pathways into nursing and midwifery at Western Sydney University.
It'll be really excited to have a voice as well in it, because definitely as students, it's really good to have someone, as academic staff in the university working with students and having that 3rd perspective, which is really exciting to have as well. So with the students here, as a mix for anyone who's interested in nursing and midwifery, we might just go in a quick discussion of the different pathways, the different studying and opportunities. So yeah, so does anyone want to jump into it and just explain what kind of pathways there are for nursing or any midwifery aspects related?
I'm happy to start. For me personally, when finishing high school, I thought I wanted to do midwifery. So I thought I'd start off with the Bachelor of Nursing degree, which is 3 years, and then midwifery is only an additional year on top of that. But once I started the Bachelor of Nursing degree, and you're exposed to a lot of different areas of nursing within your 1st year. So you sort of get an idea of what other areas of nursing there are. So yeah, so I thought I wanted to do midwifery, but then once I started Bachelor of Nursing, I've realized that I wanted to specialize in mental health nursing. So it's really good. Even if you don't know what you want to do, I think it's a good starting point to get your foot in the healthcare system, and then you can always do more postgrad studies or, specialize.
Yeah, and there's also other
Yeah,
programs like that include like Macquarie Health, which do new grad programs, but they lead into like further postgrad studies. So like specializing in certain areas of nursing. So for example, I'm hoping to specialize in emergency care, and then you can do different sections like peri-op, such as surgeries and stuff like that, assisting the surgeons. But it just depends on where you want to go, and they offer a lot of programs on that as well after your new grad period.
And even if someone didn't want to become a registered nurse straight away, they can go through TAFE, or Liverpool Hospital provides a program for enrolled nursing, and which means essentially you do a lot of the same things that a registered nurse will do, but you're just not registered at that point. And then you can always go further for your bachelor's. So whether you have some circumstances that make you not be able to attend uni, there's always those other those other pathways, and you still get paid for those while you're studying as well, because you work.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to add. It's like you can start in TAFE and then it like converts into uni. So if like for students, there's always ways to get in if you don't achieve like the required ATAR or whatever it may be, which is really good.
Yeah, definitely. So just going to go back into that. So when we do the usual 3 years of nursing, and then there's our option of doing that postgrad of midwifery if you want. Let's say for you guys, when you have your specialized areas that you're interested in, do you have to do any further study? Let's say if you want to do emergency or mental health, is there anything that requires that extra studying, or do you just apply for the area you want to work in?
So you literally just apply for the area you want to work in, but then you can always like further up your position, I guess. If you've worked in a specialty for like, I think it's like 4 or 5 years, you can go further study and then like become like a clinical nurse specialist, or you could even like go on further to become like a nurse practitioner. So it's good.
And
just
sorry.
No, that's okay.
I was just if you're just working in a particular specialty but you haven't gone for any postgrad studying, the hospital usually provides you with opportunities to just further your skills. So if you want to do peds, for example, pediatrics, then they give you training in certain areas such as cannulation on little children, or particular medications for little children as well. So they pay you an amount, also they pay you to actually further your study while you're working there as well.
Yeah, and
so it's really good whichever area you work in. Yeah.
Sorry,
you're going to say something, Daniel?
Yeah, no, it's all good. But look, at the end of the day, regardless of what specialty you want to go to, I'm not sure about other unis, but UTS offers like a specialty subject towards the end of your degree. So you really get that information and stuff that will allow you to feel a bit more confident going into your area of choice, really.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Then is there any, you have students saying, do you have to do, like a science subject in year 12, or is there any like really important subject that you would recommend or you found useful to you when you did your uni degree?
Yeah, for that. I realized that biology helped quite a bit, because one of my units actually, for pretty much the whole semester, was exactly HC biology, like textbook straight out of the textbook. So I was pretty happy I did that, and it actually helped quite a bit with the study load and everything like that. So yeah, I definitely recommend doing HC biology.
I didn't do HC biology or even senior science, and I will say that maybe in the first year it was a little bit more difficult for me, but regardless, the uni provides you with all the resources to actually learn still. So you're not really any disadvantaged if you don't study biology or senior science, but it would help you, yeah.
I think even chemistry at times. We had a few subjects in first and second year, and I was like, I should have done chemistry. So it's not like Leda said, it's not like a make or break, but it would be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think SOR would really help, which is kind of a shocker to some people, but you get a lot of patients with who have different cultural backgrounds, different religious beliefs, and it really teaches you just a background into what they believe in, and it also teaches you just patience and empathy as well, I think. So I feel like SOR could really help with nursing too.
Yeah, definitely. Because you're in the, like during placement, you're in the normal shift work of like 7 to 8 hours, and you're there like going into rooms, talking to different, like women or patients, and you have to strike up conversations sometimes. And sometimes the things they say are like, that's really different than, what I believe in. So definitely seeing where they come from makes a huge difference in some conversations sometimes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Then how about like for all of you guys, and what's the reason why you chose like nursing, for example? Why not something else?
This is the golden question everyone asks.
It's a big question.
Yeah, it is. It's a big question. I think it comes from a place of like wanting to help people. And I can say for myself, like I was working in retail for like a year or two after I graduated. And then when I made that shift into getting like a hospital job, I was like, wow, like it feels so much more fulfilling. Like I actually feel like I'm making a difference rather than like just, going in, doing your 9 to 5 and leaving. Like feel like you're contributing something, which is nice.
Yeah, 100%. Also, like, it's the matter of, wanting to learn things from your experiences at work, and really, like, I feel like I can leave placement or any hospital work at all, just knowing that I learned a lot from what I experienced for the people that I spoke with, and the things that I saw, and it just makes you appreciate things at home and everywhere else much more when you see what's going on around the world. It kind of grounds you.
Does Zaid or Layla want to add anything?
I don't really have anything. They kind of said everything. I just think it's a great opportunity to not only to like better yourself, but it helps you better society as well, because whether you're doing pediatrics or whether you're doing aged care, if you're doing pediatrics, then you know that you're helping a child to be healthy and to grow into someone, into someone and a whole nother being. Whether you're doing aged care, you know that you could be in that position one day, and you want to provide the care and the support to them that you hope you'll receive one day. Yeah.
I kind of laugh when I get asked this question, because I keep remembering when one of my mates from school as well, he did nursing work experience, and he told me that he hated it. Like he said, I just hate running around talking to people. I hate checking vitals. I hate all this stuff. And then he goes, oh, why'd you do it? Why'd you do it? And then I don't know, like you guys pretty much answered it as well, where I just felt like I wanted to care for people. Like I didn't want to sit behind. I didn't want my whole life, sitting strictly behind a desk, working away on a computer. I felt like actually going out and doing something as well. And another big part that actually made me do this course is that I have quite a bit of people, quite a bit of family in nursing as well. Like I've got another cousin who's a male as well. He graduated. He actually finished this year, and he's already working in, I think, Mount Druitt Hospital. And I've got another 2 cousins. They're working up somewhere in North Sydney, and I just hear their experiences. And for me, like I remember the first thing my cousin told me was that don't do nursing. You're gonna hate the job. And then he told me the stories, and I don't know, I felt an appeal to it. And then I was like, all right, yeah, why not? Let's check it out. And then there you go. I liked it. Now I'm doing it.
I think like you said, like it's like a love-hate relationship. You have some days when you're like, oh God, why did I choose this career? It's like crazy stuff going on. But then there's other days where you're like, oh my God, like I'm doing the best job ever. Like I'm so happy with my career choice. But I think for you guys as well, like being males, you guys are like gold in the system. There's always like that one male patient that's like, I don't want to be looked after by a female. So you guys would, be very appreciated.
And there's a lot of
Yeah.
questions that arise from it too, like that whole, it is a female-dominated career, but it's rapidly changing, and there's a lot of different things coming into, the way we work and how we do things. So it's definitely important for people that are considering it, if they're worried about that whole, male-female thing. It's definitely changing, and we need the men, like Ray Hunt said.
Yeah, definitely. Like even while I'm doing, as I was doing midwifery, even I see like male midwives walking around and everything. And sometimes it's interesting when you first think about it, but sometimes the things they do is like you appreciate it for like sometimes. But it's a mixed opinion, I think, in terms of midwifery, obviously.
Yeah.
But I guess like even for students who are thinking about, let's say, midwifery, there's those two different pathways. You can certainly do first nursing of 3 years and then that additional 1 year of midwifery if you want. Or the one that I'm doing is 3 years of midwifery. And you definitely get thrown in there. All the nursing students who've been in placement as well would know. You definitely get thrown in their first year and like you run around, you see all these things and stuff like that. Definitely. Like I think as I was beginning my placement, my first dose of my time in the birthing unit, like the first shift, they just like run into the room and go see a birth. And I went out and I'm like, I'm never having kids. But it changes as the time goes by and you learn heaps of things as it was mentioned, like in terms of midwifery, you care more so for the pregnant woman. You see the construction of families. You learn from that as well. Like
Definitely.
you learn different relationships, people's life stories, their pathways. Certainly midwifery, seeing all the certainly nursing, seeing so many different areas like mental health, cardio, or like all these vast ranges of areas. And there's always, I'm sure you guys have stories to tell, which I'm keen to hear, like stories that you hear gratitude from patients, hear those small stories that make a difference and ground you in why you're doing this. Do you guys have any experiences where, you walked out of interacting with someone, you're like, yeah, definitely, like I'm needed in this area. It could be positive or negative that made you certainly want to stay in this area. Was there any stories that you guys have?
I think there's so many, like it could just be little things every single day. Like someone saying, oh, thank you so much, what you're doing is amazing. There's like one in particular is like being included in the passing of a family member. So obviously once the individual passes, you go in and you prepare the body to take it down to the morgue or whatever. And it's just like, it's a very honorable position. Those individuals trust you with their family member who they love so much. And it's a very emotional time period. And you're sort of just taking a step into their lives and their family, I guess. So it's very honorable. And you just sort of take a step back and you're like, wow, like, I am making a difference. And it's a nice feeling.
And even going exactly with what you're saying, like whether the patient has passed or you have a patient who is passing, to you, they might feel like just another patient, but to them, you are the nurse who is taking care of their dying loved one. So it's just, you really need to put that into your mindset and put things into perspective and realize that the care you provide, every single little action you do will make a big impact on them and their family. And when you think about that, you just kind of realize that what you do is really important and you should carry yourself in a very respectable way, in a very caring way. Yeah.
I find myself having to remind myself, like, these people are literally having the worst days of their lives. And so you're sort of in a position to sort of ease that pressure on them, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But like the stories that you guys are saying is such a heavy mental load. Like I experienced obviously a very different side of it, like because my area, from my experience, it's mostly a very positive experience. You see life coming in, but here and there, but here and there, you see, I've experienced being in a room where, they're giving birth to a baby who's not going to make it, for example, and you're sharing that intimate moment with those couples and everything. But for example, for you guys as well, how do you think you deal with that, that mental load? And especially since most of us here are quite young, below the age of 25, how do you like it's a heavy mental load at the end of the day. How do you guys think you cope with it sometimes?
You don't. No, I'm joking. Honestly, I don't really have an answer for it because I'm only in 3rd year, and at this point I haven't really come up with my protective factors, but definitely family, just venting to someone but still maintain confidentiality, of course, is really important. And just speaking to people who really understand as well. So like sometimes me and Rehan talk to each other about our placements, whether they were good or bad. We've spoken to each other about it, and we kind of just vent to each other. And just, again, I would say like putting things into perspective, that you're there to help someone and it's not about you. You can always go and cry in the closet and then come back out and be like a fabulous nurse to them. But you need to give yourself that 5 minutes just to compose yourself and remember that like this is your job. You're going to go home and you're going to have a good day. You'll be with your family. Their problems aren't your problems when you leave the ward. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think it's very difficult at the start to be able to switch everything off when you do leave. But I think it comes with experience. You just sort of be like, okay, I'm leaving this at work now, because if you bring everything you see at work back home, like it's not good for your mental health, I guess. Yeah, it's hard to be able to switch it off, but it comes with experience. Yeah, I think it's important to like, their problems are not my problems when I leave the hospital.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that
I
whole
guess that's a really good answer.
life. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Go for it.
But yeah, no, it's important to remember that whole, at the end of the day, you're doing the best of your abilities and you're helping them to a certain extent, but there's only so much you can do. And also like there is support services throughout placement and the hospital. When you go on placements, you have your facilitator with you the whole time. You have uni that has all the support services as well. So those are things to consider as well when you are feeling a bit stressed. But at the end of the day, it's just a matter of distinguishing placement or hospital work with your actual life and understanding that there's only so much you can do.
And I think
And I guess that's
I just want to say on that topic, I think it's also important to just reinforce that like self first, because like there's a saying, you can't keep pouring out of an empty cup. So if you are mentally or physically drained, you're going there to provide care for other people, but it's not going to be like the best quality of care, which it should be. So it's important to be able to self-reflect and say, hey, I'm not 100% today. Maybe it's best if I take the day off or whatever. I think that's important, especially with long hours and shift work. You can't just keep saying yes to everything. So I think I've been learning this year that it's important to put yourself first.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess like that shift work as well, you're able to clock out when you finish your shift work because you give that story to the next person who's on the shift, kind of a thing. So I guess that really helps with disconnecting it, because you unload in a sense that burden onto the next person, and then they do so and so forth. And I guess like the friendship you make with different nursing students is so different, because like when you explain to family members the terminology, they're like, oh, what on earth is that? And you're like, rather than explaining the whole content, it's so much more better to speak to like other like midwifery students or nursing students, because they get it. And I think debriefing, like you guys mentioned, is so important, because at first, like you will just get too drained out, and you can either get like burnt out or even turned off from the job if you can't connect it to that deeper meaning that you're doing the stuff, or like once again knowing that their problem's not yours, definitely. And
Even
someone,
sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just saying, even remembering that one bad experience, and I mean this for like people who are just going to enter nursing, one bad experience doesn't make the career, doesn't make the degree. For example, on my first placement, the registered nurse I was budgeted with ran away from me, and he literally hid from me for the whole placement. So, I mean, that kind of wasn't great, but not all the nurses are like that. They're not all going to run away from you. So just remembering that an experience doesn't make the whole degree, doesn't make the whole job. And you just got to work through that and push through and remember why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, everyone has bad first experiences. I remember my first placement, I called uni and I was going to drop out, actually. I had a really bad experience involving a death of a patient. I got asked to translate for something little, and then they wanted me to communicate with the patient that he was passing in a few hours. But oh yeah, it was a traumatizing placement, but they asked me to just stay. Just remember that it was one experience, and that obviously there's more to it than just that one experience, and we're about to finish now. So yeah, definitely hold on through. But it happens. You have bad experiences and they're very confronting, but it's important to look at them as an experience and not as the whole degree or the career, really.
Yeah, definitely. And someone also asked you personally, Daniel, how did you mentally recuperate from seeing the death of your patient? Or anyone else can add in, like how, because death is a very, very obviously confronting matter that, as you know, many of us young, we don't come across that day to day, especially witnessing like the whole step of it. How, like Danny and others, how do you guys recuperate from that?
It all comes down to you, what you believe in, your values, how you perceive things, and it's a matter of understanding how you feel about it. And it's okay to feel confronted about it. I remember when me and Rehan had a placement together, we had to help the nurses take the body down to the morgue and all that. And I went home that day completely fine until I got onto the train back home, and then it hit me like really hard. But it was a matter of understanding that like that's the process of things, and it's inevitable. Like it's going to happen to all of us at one point in our lives, but it's the way that you think of the care that you gave to that person before, how they were treated after, and providing that respect regardless of what position they're in at the moment. And you get there eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a straightaway process. And even sometimes you think you're okay and you're really not. Like on one of my placements, just 2 weeks before my placement, my grandfather had passed away. And then 2 weeks into my placement, I had a patient who presented with the same thing as my grandfather passed away with, same age, same beliefs, even looked like him, and he passed away. And so I thought I was fine. I still think like I'm okay. That could have affected me way worse. But I didn't realize that low-key it did affect me. But yeah, you just kind of, you sort through it. It's not a straightaway process. You just kind of gradually work towards it, work towards getting better, and it's all okay. Yeah, it always gets better.
I think, like, I hate to say this, but I think you sort of become desensitized towards it the more you see it. Like, as a third year, I've been working like in the hospital for a good 2 years now. I've seen my fair share of it. But like Danny said, it literally just comes down to what you believe in, and if you have like grounding core values, I guess it's easier to come to terms with.
Do you see that like spiritual change in the patients when you see them coming closer to death? Do you think that there's a big change in them, you know, thinking about life and everything, or people around them?
It's inevitable. And that's where, as a nurse, you got to remember, you do have your values, you do have your beliefs. But there's very specific rules and opinions when it comes to those kind of things as well. Like, you got to obviously respect other people's values and stuff. And a lot of times people will ask you questions, but a lot of times you shouldn't really answer it. So it just depends. They definitely start to see a bit of light, or they start to see things a bit differently, and you can support them through that. But there's only so much you can do when it comes to that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It's not easy at all. Like I think like resilience is such a huge thing in this course, you know, like you said, sometimes you have like days where you're on high, you know, you really feel like you've made that impact, you have amazing experiences. And then sometimes whether it be the staff or like the people you're working with, like you might, or whether it be to yourself, you might not be proud of it, or you might have had negative experience. It's how, you know, I guess you emotionally build yourself up to it, and it teaches you so much, not only skills in the course, but just skills in the like life in general, definitely. This is a bit of a warmer question. Like, what do you think the most rewarding part of this whole career is to you personally?
You know what, just seeing the transition of a patient when they first come in versus upon discharge, like on placement, you're there for a good 4 weeks. So you see their initial presentation and then you see their discharge and you're like, wow, you have like improved so much like within the past 4 weeks. And it's just a heartwarming thing. And especially when they express their gratitude towards you and they're like, oh, like thank you so much. I don't know. It's a heartwarming experience.
So, yeah. I don't have anything to add to that.
Pretty much, yeah. That's the hopeful outcome of everything, really. But sometimes they don't always recover as well as they used to. But the fact that you have that new sense of connection between your patient and their families, and they feel grateful for whatever you did, for how much you did, and it's just a matter of understanding that, like, it's the little things that count, and you doing your best to support them, whether they recover or not. Then they definitely appreciate that, and that's I think that's the most beneficial thing. You're always feeling appreciated, so it's good.
I was going to say, I think even if the patient doesn't tell you, I think it's also like a self-reflection thing. Like, be like, wow, I have, you know, compared to my first year when I couldn't do that, I have grown so much. And I'm now able to do this, or, oh, I've become resilient, or I've grown thicker skin, or whatever. So 100% self-reflection thing as well.
And I think sometimes it really teaches you to just appreciate what you've got, whether it be your health, whether it be your spiritual beliefs, whether it be your family, because you're always going to be presented with a confronting scenario or like circumstance with your patients. And then so you might realize that I'm so grateful I have a family who support me, or I'm so grateful that my parents have, I don't know, taught me a particular moral lesson, and so I haven't ended up in this position. Or you're grateful that you've got your health, because you could lose any of that at any time. So it just really teaches you to appreciate what you do have and help those who don't have what you have.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think's needed for, what kind of personality traits do you guys think it's needed for as a student, especially even as a nurse? What do you think are the biggest tips you would think that as a nurse, you know, as a student, I can answer later on as a student midwife, but as a student nurse, what do you think the traits are like necessary that you should have besides, you know, empathy and compassion? What else do you think is things that do you think are really important to have with you?
I think
Patience.
that's for one thing, confidence, because as a student, you're sort of at the bottom of the food chain. So you sort of just go into a work environment that's already, you know, they've already formed their relationships. They're already a tight-knit work environment. And then you're this outsider coming in like, hey, I'm joining you guys for the next 4 weeks or whatever. So if you are very reserved and you don't put yourself out there, you're going to be left out. Like, that's the reality of it. So even if not actually confident, you sort of have to fake the confidence and be like, I know what I'm doing. Like, can I have the opportunity to do this? And then that confidence like sort of goes on to the patients as well. And they're like, oh, hey, I am in good hands.
Yeah, definitely. Like, even, you know, like as you guys said, that confidence is definitely so important, because sometimes the nurse you're paired up with or the midwife you're paired up with can have that ability to, you know, join you in and give you that confidence. But sometimes they're busy with their shift and you can't take it personally. You have to, you know, sometimes whether you make conversations with patients confidently, or even when they ask you questions and you're not sure, you answer to the best of your abilities whilst knowing your limitations, saying, you know, like, I don't know, but this is what I know, you know, especially as a midwifery student, you know, it's not only, I guess many people think, oh, and you know, you'd have to be so confident in seeing like all these different, you know, confronting stuff. And you're like, not really. Like, I would have never thought I would have gone into that field. And you see things and you get used to it. And also like being able to say that you don't take things personally, I think is so important. And it's something that you don't just walk into placement first of all knowing, you know, sometimes, you know, you can take things personally and that's completely fine. But I guess like being able to disconnect yourself from that and trying to see what you can do in that situation. I find that there's a huge advantage as a student that you can slip into rooms and, you know, become that moderator between the hierarchy of a nurse or a doctor, between the patient. You can speak in the language that they understand and stuff like that, especially. And yeah, like 100%, it's a thing that you constantly develop upon and everything. And sometimes you feel like you're not doing enough for the people you're caring with, and that's fine. I guess like you guys would definitely have your input in this. Sometimes you don't feel like you're doing the best. Sometimes you feel like, you know, you're just standing there as an extra person in the room. And I guess that's, you know, that's completely fine. Sometimes you can take that as an observation, but having that initiative to, you know, even putting a few words, even I guess like helping them, you know, get up, or helping them, giving a few words of encouragement while they're giving birth or while they're doing a different, you know, thing is really important as well. I guess. Do you guys have any other input?
I think it's a matter of having perspective as well. Like, people are going to yell at you, people are going to swear at you, they're going to say a lot of things to you, but you can either take it personally, and that's both patients and the nurses sometimes, you know, because like Rehan said, you're put into this environment where everyone's used to doing everything and you don't know what's going on, so you're just kind of floating around. But if you're understanding like where the patient's coming from and what position they're in at that current stage, it makes it a bit easier to deal with that kind of stress and deal with all the things that are going on around you. Yeah, that's one piece of advice I can give. Yeah.
I think adaptability is really important in a nursing student and a nurse, because in any situation you kind of have to adapt yourself, because you're bringing yourself to your practice, but you can't completely be yourself. You have to adapt to what your patient needs or what the team needs or what the situation needs, because for example, with COVID, nursing students had to adapt to what COVID brings. We weren't allowed to, on some of our placements got changed and we had to adapt straight away. Or we have patients who you walk into one room and they have a certain set of needs. Maybe they're bedbound and you have to adapt to those needs, and you walk into your other room and you might have a mental health patient and you have to adapt your practice to what they need. So I think adaptability is one of the most important as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just probably keep a pause on there because we took up some time. I want to move on to Dr. Rakim Elmir, who kindly joined us today as well. We'll continue the Q&A session later with her joining in as well, with her like precious input as well. So like I'll read her biography again, seeing her background, which is really, really interesting. So once again, she's a senior lecturer and deputy director of clinical education midwifery in the School of Nursing and Midwifery in Western Sydney University. So she worked in a vast area of maternity settings in large hospitals and completed her PhD in 2012. She focused on women's experiences of severe postpartum hemorrhage and emergency hysterectomy. She successfully led a number of research projects on birth trauma and the psychological impact on mothers, fathers, and midwives. Rakim also has an interest in clinical learning for nursing and midwifery students and leading a project on clinical placement preparedness for nursing and midwifery students. She's a co-creator of the first national branded hijab to be introduced in the university, along with resources to support nursing and midwifery students on clinical placement. It's really interesting. And her hijab initiative work had received recognition by the Vice Chancellor for excellence in the university engagement and sustainability, and highly commended and citation for outstanding contribution to student learning. So I think that's definitely a really exciting, background that's certainly applied to us as students, her having that amazing role to support students and help us in our placements and our experience to become nurses and midwives. So thank you so much for joining us, and please share your own words and experiences as well.
Thank you very much. I think I'll start with the background to the hijab initiative, why we went down that pathway. What we found at Western Sydney University School of Nursing and Midwifery was quite a number of Muslim nursing and midwifery students were starting the course but not continuing with the course. So they were starting but discontinuing from the course. So when we looked further into the reasons why these students were discontinuing from the course or not, they may have been graduating but not practicing, was that their beliefs, their Muslim beliefs and practices was incompatible with the nursing and midwifery profession. So what I did was I collaborated with the director of clinical at that time, and we looked at, and also the community leaders, a sheikh was also involved, and we had a look at what are the broad areas of concerns for midwifery for Muslim nursing and midwifery students, and they included caring for the opposite gender, whether that be a male nurse, a student nurse caring for a female patient, or a female student nurse caring for a male patient. Another area was bearing the arms to the elbows, so bearing their forearms, and practicing hand washing and surgical washing techniques. The other area was around prayer and needing to take time away from clinical placement and having to go away and pray. Another area was also clinical uniform. So many of the female student nurses resisted wearing pants, even though they weren't tight fitted, so they're not leggings or any sort of way you could, they weren't fitted, but they preferred to wear skirts. So we needed clear guidelines, resources to support these students, hence why I collaborated with a Muslim community leader. And there are clear instructions in terms of what is permissible and what is not. And so we work together to really identify what nursing and midwifery students can and can't do. And so it provides a go-to fact sheet. And so it's clear in terms of, what they can and can't do in conjunction with whether or not they prefer to do it, or so is it more a cultural or religious factor? So we needed to identify, was this a cultural reason or was this a religious reason behind the not wanting to wear pants, not wanting to wash their arms and practice universal precautions, and not wanting to care for the opposite gender.
Yeah, I think that's really significant, definitely. When I wear the scarf, they tell me I have to put my sleeves up to a certain length, and sometimes, you feel uncomfortable, and even the scarf has to do that. So I think that's really amazing. Even in your experience, I see that you really, you would have to collaborate a lot with students and supporting them. What kind of support, do you usually give to the students from Western Sydney? And also, what do you think is really important in the student to be able to continue and also become a very confident midwife and nurse in practice as well, from your experience?
Sure. So students have to be invested in their degree. So it's not smooth sailing, nursing and midwifery. And so you do have to be committed to the profession. So whether that be nursing or midwifery. The midwifery degree does have a lot more clinical placement hours. It's almost 50% clinical, 50% theory, whereas nursing, not as much as midwifery. But irrespective, you do have to invest full-time hours. So, for example, if you have a full-time job, university is a full-time job as well. And so that's why we ask students to refrain from working part-time, really, or even full-time, whilst they're studying full-time, because it really does involve a lot of hours of study and really to understand some of the content that's covered. So, I mean, it's not what we call rocket science, but you need to be able to understand certain concepts. And if you're working full-time, some students do work full-time, but I can tell you they're not the students that are excelling in the degree either.
Yeah.
So they may be the students that tend to be struggling a little bit. They may get by, but they might find it a bit difficult. And so when clinical placement, it is difficult. It's difficult because it's unpaid time in the clinical area. And so unless you undertake an assistant in nursing for the nursing degree in your second year, usually they'll employ you in your second year, or even an assistant in midwifery, again, employed in your second year, then pretty much, the rest of the degree is unpaid clinical placement hours. So you need that time, you need to be able to invest that time. There'll be a lot of sacrifices. I'm not saying, say goodbye to your social life, but you may need to turn down a few social events, again, to be able to really, I mean, it's only for 3 years, so all things come to an end, right? And if you just put in that little bit of effort, you can get through it. But if you plan on going out every day or say every weekend, particularly when your exam period is, during that exam period, you may not be, you may be a little bit disappointed with the marks that you received, the grades that you received. So a bit of time, sacrifices, energy, collaborate with, your peers, peer support, is a strong predictor as well. I looked at nurses who were underperforming, who had repeated units in their nursing studies, and what helped them the most was academic support and also peer support. So they tend to go to their peers for advice on their assessments more than they would approach their academics. So I'm not sure if some of our panelists here may also want to comment, but peer support again is is a strong predictor as to how you progress in your course. And I could just see here Rehan and Layla, I mean, and also Daniel, I can see the tight-knit support network that they have, and it's just lovely to see. So, I just want to commend them. I mean, you're so close towards the end, and I'm sure you've had a lot of, you've put in a lot of effort and time and sacrifices. So, and at times, wanting to give up, but you're almost at the end now, and I'm sure you've all applied to want to do your new grad year next year. So all the best with the outcomes for that. But yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Also, just a quick question as well, especially since you've had the background in, academics and further research in very interesting areas. What was the pathway that you took, and what interested you in partaking in the research aspect, and any pros and cons in initiating into that area?
Yeah, look, I studied my nursing first. I always knew I wanted to be a midwife, but at that time, this was quite a few years ago, at that time, there was no Bachelor of Midwifery. So Sophia, I understand you're studying a Bachelor of Midwifery at UTS. And so I did my 3 years nursing and then my year of midwifery. And I then took a year off to work as midwife. And then I went back and I studied my honours. And during my honours year, I looked at women who had, under the age of 50, who had breast cancer and breast surgery, mainly lumpectomy and mastectomy. And then from my honours degree, I was offered to study my doctoral degree, my PhD, and that was 4 years full-time. And I went into academia from there full-time. So before that time, during my honours, or just after I finished my honours, I taught casually as an academic, and then after my PhD, I was appointed as a full-time lecturer at Western Sydney University. So that's the pathway I took, and look, I would encourage you. I'm not sure if Daniel, Rehan or Layla are interested in further research, but that's definitely another pathway. Yeah. Some hospitals do offer a program for new grads, so that you could do a part-time new grad program and also part-time honours programs, and again pursuing areas of interest. And so again, my areas of interest were women's health and midwifery, and you can look at those areas. I know sometimes students, when they look at research, they think, oh my God, how boring, I don't want to look at that. That's a different language. What really drove me and motivated me was more the topic area. How can you make a difference? And I know you all talked about making a difference, and this research is the area you'll make a difference in terms of what's the best practice. So when you care for a patient, for example, in nursing with a fractured neck or femur, what is the best practice guidelines under care for a patient with a fractured neck of femur. And so that all comes down to research. So the medications you give, what underpins or supports our administration of medication, it all comes down to research. So it's a very interesting area. And again, that would be another pathway for anyone who's interested. I'm happy to take any questions and for anyone to email me afterwards. Yeah.
I just want to add, talking on the importance of research, I think you can also tell the difference between a nurse who is well researched and actually knows the reasoning as to why they're doing this or why they're giving the medication, as opposed to someone who's just like, oh, the doctor ordered it, I'm just going to do it. So I think, like you said, always it is a nice thing to sort of further your study. You become more confident in your practice as well.
Yeah. Can I ask you, Daniel, Rehan, and Layla, are you interested in further research, and which area would you consider exploring further?
I'm interested in mental health, so I sort of want to progress further study in there, but after the first few years of experience.
I'm definitely interested. I'm considering on doing the honours with new grads, but I'm just not sure in terms of workload. So I'm still thinking about that one. I'm interested in critical care and especially peds, so maybe mixing the two and even doing NICU. That would be really interesting, I think, for me.
At this current stage, I'm not really considering research, but I'm definitely looking into it in later stages of nursing. I just do really want to build up on my experiences, but like Layla said, definitely critical care is the pathway I'm hoping to take. Yeah.
Good. All the best with that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rakim, for joining us as well. It's such an honor to have you on board with your experience, and definitely we can share your email if it's all right with you. If anyone has any further questions, to reach out, definitely. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We'll move on to Q&A, and you're more than welcome to put in your input as well. It'd be amazing to hear from you. Just going through the questions, someone asked, this is more so in relation to midwifery, navigating the high stress and emotional mothers who are about to give birth as a midwife. Do you have to be, strong emotionally, and would it be harder if you're emotional? I guess, like, from my personal experience as well, when you walk into birthing, you can hear different emotions of women, but I think it's not so much being too emotional that you can't do it. I think, there are moments where, girls have like cried with the woman and stuff like that. But I think you don't have to more so be extremely emotionally strong. I think just being like emotionally very empathetic makes the biggest difference, because they always say, like, the woman remembers who's at her birth. I've walked into rooms with a midwife, and I've had situations where the husband and wife looked at that nurse, the midwife, and said, you caught my baby 10 years ago. We still remember your name and everything, which was insane. Or like, I've had an experience while I was up in NICU for intensive care for small babies. I see a woman and she said, you were in my birth last year. And it was just like very interesting that they remember all this sort of stuff. So I think rather than always being that emotionally strong, it's okay to share emotions with a woman, but I guess that certain level of empathy and, joining that experience with the husband and wife is such an intimate time that, like, being emotional makes them more better, like, in a sense, in a more empathetic sense, definitely.
Yeah, you don't have to know what you're doing half the time. Like, I remember one experience where we were in theatre and I got to experience a birthing. It was a C-section, but the husband had just passed out and there was no one that spoke Arabic, and the lady only spoke Arabic, so I had to like hold her hand and support her through the whole thing. And I had no clue what I was doing or saying, but you get through it. It was a very interesting experience, but they ended up naming their child after me, and like they do remember you, and they do. Yeah, it was a very funny. I saw them a few years after, but yeah, it's a nice experience, and yeah, half the time you're winging it, so it's really good. Yeah.
Because like at that time they don't need that hierarchical figure to tower over them. They just need that extra support person 100%. And like it makes a difference. At that time they could be screaming at you, they could be in pain, but like right after the baby comes, they just look at you and they say a few words that shows that it makes a huge difference. Definitely. And there's another interesting few questions about doctors as well. So experience working with doctors, is there any, you know, arrogant experiences due to their perceived sense of superiority, or like even is it easy to work with them, or, you know, other roles like pharmacists, you know, how do you navigate that way through as a student or even as a nurse in a sense, collaborating with them?
Do you know what? I think at the start it's very daunting, like, oh, I have to go and talk to the doctor. But when you're in a high pressure, high stress environment, like there's been times even I as a student, I've had to sort of answer back to a doctor and be like, no, you should have told us, or like sort of learn to be stern with them, I guess. But yeah, 100%. You come across the ones that are like, oh, I'm at the top of the food chain. Like, I know what I'm doing, you know, better than everyone else. But also in saying that, there are also some lovely doctors, like literally the other day, I had one that was like, come, I'm going to explain to you why this happens, and actually take the time out to explain to you as a student. And I think that's very lovely as well. So you get a mix of both.
I think definitely when you first start off, you think that you get really nervous around them. And even now, sometimes I get nervous around them because you hear things and you're like, oh, okay, they seem a bit strict or they seem a bit uptight. But a lot of the times, if they are, you know, they have a bit of an attitude, we also need to remember that doctors work really, really hard, especially surgeons. They don't get much sleep. They don't get to eat much. They haven't seen their family in probably like 7 days. So again, empathy is really important. And of course, they just want to be rude. And all you can do is just say, okay, like, you know, you gotta deal with it. At the end of the day, it's not about you, it's about your patient. But some doctors are absolutely lovely, and you can be best friends with them in like a day. But you're always gonna have negative experiences, and you're always gonna have positive experiences. But as long as you do your best and you maintain your professionalism, then that's all you can do.
Yeah, definitely. And like at the end of the day, the common thing that both of us are here for is for the patient or the woman. It's for their well-being. So, you know, many doctors are open to learning from, you know, like nurses and midwives, and we're so open to learning from them. And I think having that ability of clear communication with one another is so important, because as soon as you step into that room, hierarchy doesn't matter. It's the skills you're equipped with, and both sides are equally as important. Doctors do amazing things, just as, you know, nurses and midwives do. So definitely, yeah.
Yeah, you have to collaborate, work as a team. That's right. Yeah. You're also accountable for your actions. So as per the nurses and midwives competency standards, you are accountable. So it's not a matter of whatever the doctor prescribes on that medication chart, for example. You need to know your medications. You need to go to the MIMS if you're, you know, unsure of anything. So I've had a situation where I've questioned a few times a medication that's been prescribed, and on those occasions the doctor has been incorrect. So they make mistakes; they're human as well. So it's a mistake, but as long as it is picked up before it's administered to the vulnerable patient. Yeah.
Especially as a first year student, they really drill into you about communication and documentation. Like especially documentation, because when you're administering medication, you're kind of like the last line of security. Whatever passes you, that's it. Like if, for example, the doctor did put let's say put a too big of a dosage on paper, you're going to be accountable if you deliver that dose. You can't go back and say, oh, the doctor ordered it. It's your, like, you have to be accountable of that. Like especially like first year, they take you through, like first year of nursing, they take you through all the medication calculations and everything like that. So it is definitely that is definitely one big part of a responsibility as well, where, you know, like I was going back to what Rehan said as well, where doctors, they might be very busy. Sometimes they have to look after almost 20 patients at a time. They have to look after multiple wards as well. So you have to take that into account. So you have to be very, very in the moment. You have to be very present as well. And yeah, that's pretty much. Unfortunately, I can't speak for experience because, you know, COVID kind of didn't let us take placements. But from, you know, what I've heard from tutors' stories, from cousins' stories and stuff like that. So yeah.
Just like quickly going into that, was there like I think you're the perfect person to answer the question. So, since it's such an interactive role, this course, do you find that the shift to online learning has caused quite a loss of opportunity and connection to develop that, interpersonal like interactions if you would have otherwise built on placement? Like, what's your current experience? Because as far as I know, I think the students have been quite affected during COVID with cancellation of placements. So, how would you answer about that?
Yeah. Well, in our case, we only really had like maybe 4 or 5 weeks to even get to know each other, like as a class. And especially for a lot of us, our expectation was we want to go out in placement. We want to go out there, learn hands-on, learn how to treat people. And then week 5 of the first half of semester, you have to go back home. You have to learn in front of a computer. You can't go to the CPUs, you can't go to the practical units and work on the dolls and things, like on the mannequins and things like that. And that was a very big I'd say it was kind of like a culture shock, because for us, especially coming straight out of high school, you just started getting used to university life for a lot of us, and then you have to go back home, right? And then it just kind of kills the growth of becoming a university student. And especially when it comes to interpersonal skills, like the only way you can build interpersonal skills is when you're with other people. And then when you're stuck isolated at home, those get affected, definitely. I'm pretty sure most of us, even us watching, will know that when you stay home for like 2 weeks and you go out with your mates, you feel a little bit different, right? It doesn't feel the same as before. So just think about that now affecting, your career. It becomes a big, very, very major, I'd say it becomes a very major aspect. And then I remember recently we went back to the Campbelltown campus to do some catch-up lessons in the practical units, and everyone was just pumped. They were just pumped to get back in, get completely hands-on in all the medications and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of just, it's very slow. It's a very, very draining process, but it is what it is at the end of the day. You've just got to work through it. You got to push through it. And if you just keep remembering your drive for why you're doing this course, you'll get through it. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, and hopefully you go on your placement soon to experience all the cool stories soon. I guess one of the biggest things is, we spoke a lot about the really cool stories and the cool experiences that many of us look forward to. What's the most challenging part of this course or this job? Like, I find that personally from my experience, there's a big difference between Bachelor of Midwifery and nursing, in a sense that nursing students go on rotations with different hospitals and different wards sometimes, whereas midwifery students, they have one home hospital. So throughout my 3 years of studying, I'll only be allocated to Liverpool Hospital, only in maternity, whereas nursing students would go to either, one day, one placement would be Royal North Shore, one placement would be Liverpool Campbelltown. That's from my experience, from one of the differences that might affect students. But from your experiences as well, what do you think is one of the biggest cons of this job, let's say?
I think in terms of study, it's the long placement blocks. Like I just finished 4 weeks of PM shift, so 1:30 to 10 PM, Monday to Friday, unpaid. You sort of don't have a social life, and you don't, it's hard. It's long hours, and by the end of the 4 weeks, you're exhausted. And to be honest, I didn't know that that was a thing going into the degree. And then within the first 4 or 5 months, they're like, hey, we're sending you out on placement. I was like, what is placement? So I think that is definitely one of the hardest. And it's not even like you just go and do your shift and come back. Like, there's so much emotional baggage that comes with it as well. Like, you deal with absolutely everything, and then you sort of have to be like, okay, well, I have to come back tomorrow again. You have to be very headstrong.
For some students, it's the first time they even enter a hospital.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it is very daunting as soon as you enter the foyer into the hospital. And so trying to prepare yourself leading up to it. Many students are very anxious, and I can tell you there's a high dropout rate after the first clinical placement block. So again, the motivation behind preparing students, so the clinical preparedness for nursing and midwifery students is really to prepare them leading up to their first clinical placement. Many students are unaware of what it involves, clinical placement, their expectations as a student, and their role as well. So again, just a little bit of preparedness. I mean, you may want to also just quickly touch on what would be helpful for students to know leading up to their first clinical placement. What would have been helpful for you?
I guess like you want to go? I was just going to say, I guess like one of the most important things is, not being hard on yourself. Like it was my first ever experience stepping into a hospital, and then first thing you get is, someone be like, okay, go grab me 10 units of Synto, and you're like, what on earth is that? Is that a box? Is that, a vial? Like, and I guess like just knowing that you have the support, I guess, you have facilitators to watch over you, communicating that, sometimes that it's okay to be overwhelmed, telling the person that might be supervising you that shift, saying, can I just get 5 minutes, like a step out, or can I go for my break? Sometimes I guess knowing to speak out and, knowing that you won't know everything, knowing that it's fine to watch the first time, knowing it's fine to be a shadow for a few times until you form that confidence, I guess. I think that was important. Anyone else want to answer what they wish they knew?
Touching on what you were saying, 100% confidence. Like for my first year, I was like too embarrassed, I'd say, to be like, hey, can I go for my break? So I had worked many shifts with no break, but now it's sort of like, okay, I'm going to prioritize me time because I need time to recharge as well. So I'll be like, okay, no, this is really hard, but I'm just going to go have a break.
That's true.
I think a lot of people don't like to hear this one, but it's not like Grey's Anatomy.
That's what I was going to say.
It's not. It's nothing like it. It's not always go, go, go. There's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of writing your notes. But you do get a lot of times, like experiences while you're on placement that you just don't think you're going to have. You don't ever think you're going to cry with a patient, but you do. You don't ever think that you're not going to get a chance to sit down. But you always get those, and you always do get downtime. It's not all the doctors are dating each other. No one has time for that, and no one cares for that. That's one thing. And the second one is that it's always going to be hard, but make sure you're doing the right thing, because it's very easy to cut corners. It's very easy to just say, oh, it's not my responsibility to do a certain thing, but it doesn't matter. Always do the right thing. Always research what you're doing before you do it. You might feel like it's not your responsibility to go clean up the spill on the ward, but if you don't do it, someone's going to fall, a patient's going to fall, and then that's going to be a problem for a patient. So always make sure you're doing the right thing and protect yourself as well.
Ask questions when you're on placement. So I always advise students, ask questions. No one's going to think that you're any less capable. In actual fact, they'll perceive you as very keen and motivated and taking initiative. So as long as you're not sitting there at the desk, swinging on your chair, just appear to be really interested. Go around, listen to how the nurses give handover. You also put your hand up and say, I want to give handover as well. Can I have an opportunity to do so? Again, these opportunities, soak them up as a student, because the time on placement is so precious. Before you know it, you'll be a graduate, RN, and then you're driving the bus. So the doctor will approach you, Rehan, Layla, and Daniel, and they'll ask you, okay, tell me about your patient. So don't be looking, where's Daniel, where's the RN? You're the RN, okay? Yeah.
I think as well, like, I wish I knew as a first year, it's not always glamorous. Like, you're going to do things you don't want to be doing, but it humbles you. Like, when you're in the shower, helping someone have a shower, like the first time I was doing that, I was like, oh my God, it's like, what is this, my life now? But yeah, not like Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah. I I remember having to shave a man's beard, and then my dad, God love him, he said, okay, come on, now you're practicing on me. So I had no idea what I was doing. By the end of it, the nurse said, okay, let me take over. But at least I had a go, and I started practicing on my dad, and he didn't have any cuts, and I was great at shaving beards by the end of it. So, yeah.
I think you're just thrown in there as well. Like, they don't teach you at uni, this is how to shave a beard. You just get in the ward and they're like, okay, go shave his beard. And it's like an old man. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. So, this is not how the skin is meant to be, and all of that. So sometimes it's not textbook. Yeah. It's the reality is you'll have all different patients out there on placement, and it's all about person-centered care.
Definitely. There was a question for Daniel. So how do you balance nursing placements as well as working outside in a paid position, or if anyone else works in a paid position? How do you balance it if you can?
It depends. So I'm currently doing full-time work with nursing, and we all are actually. Rayhan and Layla, from what I know, they are working at the same time as well. The good thing about nursing is you're able to have that balance, especially if you're doing things that like kind of go concurrent. So we're doing assistant and nursing jobs, and also I'm working as a lifeguard. So I'm able to put them part and part with my actual work in my uni and kind of use them simultaneously. But you need to set boundaries of how much you work and how you work. And if, you got to make sure you keep in mind of that mental stress load, and you got to understand, like how we said it, nursing is a full-time job, just as like any time of full-time job. So you got to remember that, and you got to apply that to your work as well.
Yeah, definitely. And like before any of you went into this course, how did you know, how did you know you would be able to handle such demanding careers? I think the answer to that is we didn't know before we signed up for it. But how did you think you'd be able to cope with this? Because when you thought of nursing, how did you know that it was the right thing for you? Or was there any other considerations that you would have done if you didn't do this?
You don't know until you get in there and you're having like the hardest day of your life, and you're like, okay, this is my life now.
It's quite demanding. It is very demanding, and you will not know the extent of how demanding it is until you've graduated, with the shift work that's involved and the role responsibility of your new title RN. Shift work is very demanding on the body, but then you learn to factor that into your lifestyle, and remember to always practice self-care. That's very important.
Yeah, definitely agree. And were there any other jobs that you guys would have considered if you didn't come into this, area?
I probably would have done teaching or paramedicine, and I still haven't closed the door on those. I can always become a paramedic, or I can always become a lecturer, like Dr. Akime. So those opportunities don't always close. You can always still endeavour to do those while you're doing nursing and midwifery as well.
Yeah, that's true. There's always, that door doesn't close, like you said. There's always those extra opportunities, as we saw with Dr. Rakim, or like, you can further your practice in any area, especially nursing, since it's very broad and everything. Does anyone else want to answer it?
Can also be really spontaneous.
Yeah.
Like I was going to become a mechanic or something random compared to nursing, but I didn't know what I was going to do until my trials, where I saw a question about nursing in my trial. So I decided to just take a spontaneous kind of adventure there, and we are finishing. So
yeah, that's true. Like I
can't see myself as anything else. Like I feel like, because it's a career where you use your personality a lot, which I like, because you just talk to people most of the day, especially mental health nursing. Just sit down and talk to the patient. So I think it's very fitting.
I was going to do biomedical engineering, but then I started year 12 and I saw the math and to do. Advanced maths just wasn't for me. And then yeah, it was a bit. I know it was mainly for me, just like I said, just talking to people already know in nursing. And then because I was at that stage, I was looking at careers. You know, I wanted to try and get ahead, so I can kind of have my mind set before I make my important HC subject choices. But yeah, it was very spontaneous, to be honest with you. It was very, yeah, it's kind of like a last minute decision.
That's true.
But
Yeah,
it was good. I'm very happy I took this choice. Very, very happy.
that's really good to
More than
hear.
ever, you don't actually end up in what you were thinking you were going to do in like year 11. I thought I was going to be a lawyer, and then I did legal, and I was like, no, no, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like even I decided this field like after my HSC, like I still didn't know. And it was just one conversation with a teacher and they said, like, have you ever considered it? I was like, no, like birthing and me, no. And then, you know, it comes up to you because initially I was interested in the area of medicine anyway. Like I was considering, you know, medicine if I could. And since I couldn't go straight in through year 12, I think like still, as it was mentioned before, the doors never close, you know, like especially if you're interested in the field of health, like doing this area is definitely never a waste. Like doing this area made me solidify that I'm definitely interested in women's health. And if I were to pursue medicine later on, you know, like definitely I would have loved to still specialize in this field. So I guess like it's a leap of faith, basically, you know, like everyone ends up in fields where they don't think of, or like, you know, sometimes it speaks to them at that time, definitely. Yeah.
And I feel like also this course is, it's very different, as in when you're sitting in a class, it's very textbook. You guys can be witness to this, but when you go to your placement, it's sometimes the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Like you always have your textbook treatments where, oh, this patient, he's bound to a bed and he's got a bed sore. How do you treat that? But then in reality, he's probably got like another like 3 issues and you need to deal with them simultaneously, make sure they don't collide with each other. And you got to take into even the emotional factors, the cultural factors as well. So that's another thing that's probably that differs this course from a lot of other things.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Does anyone else want to add anything?
I was just going to say that's like the beauty of nursing, I guess, even if you don't know what you want to do after high school, but you're like, hey, I think I sort of want to be in the health field. Like, I feel like it's perfect because you can come in and there's so many different ways you can go. Like I had someone be like, oh, I met this lady and I asked her, what do you do? And she's like, I'm a nurse. And it's like, okay, but what do you do? Because that tells me nothing about what you actually do.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get a taste of it in year 10. You may want to choose to do work experience in a hospital, or in year 11 and 12, there is a course, the AIN course, that you may be, again, that could be a pathway into uni or into EN, enrolled nursing. So there are different pathways. So don't be too disheartened if you do not achieve the marks to get into nursing or registered nursing into uni first go. There are different pathways. There's colleges as well that you can do like a bridging course, foundational course, and then continue that one.
Definitely. I guess like there aren't like I think we can wrap it up here. It's been like absolutely amazing and interesting, even myself, to listen to this conversation. It was like absolutely an honor for Dr. Rakim to join us. Thank you so much once again. And like thank you to all the participants today who joined to share their different inputs and everything. Every word you guys said was heaps helpful, I'm sure, to the students. Thank you so much. All the attendees who attended, thank you so much as well for attending. It was a really good conversation overall, and hopefully it's useful. You know, never be afraid to, you know, contact SAGA if need be for any further questions. And yeah, we hope to do similar things like this in the future as well. Thank you so much for everyone.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll kindly ask all the panelists to just remain, and we'll wrap it up from there, I guess.
Okay, cool.